colleagues, it's gone 2:30, so I think we'll start the meeting and conduct business. Are there any apologies for absence? Anastasia.
Thank you, Chair. There are a few apologies. Oh, sorry, Chair, that's Councillor Maguire joining now.
Okay.
Back to apologies, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Damien Doran-Timpson, Leslie Cunningham, Douglas McGowan, Donna Noble, Anne Pike, and Stevie Dunn has indicated that he needs to leave at 3.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, I think you've just joined us, so just to let you know that we haven't started any business. Carrying on, then order of business will be as previously circulated. Are there any declarations of interest? I don't see any indications, colleagues. Okay. We confirm the draft minute of the meeting of the IJB held on the 26th of June 2025. Okay. Thank you, Amjad. Thank you. Item 5, minutes for noting West Lothian IJB Healthcare Governance Group held on the 8th of May. And can we also note the West Lothian IJB ADP Executive held on the 27th of February. Note these as agreed or noted. Item 6, membership and meeting changes. Are there any business to be transacted, Anastasia?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick update, just to remind members that John Innes is to become Chair of the IJB from the 21st of September, and you, Chair, Councillor Tom Conn, will become Vice Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Takes us to item 7, Chief Officer's Report. Alison.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've got a bit of a diverse range of updates for members again today, but I'll just take you through some of those items. There's been a consultation on the revised reporting templates in terms of the Health and Care Staffing Scotland Act. So we have been engaging and feeding back on those templates. We obviously need to do an annual recording in terms of the staffing, in terms of safe staffing legislation that we have around this. Also wanting to ensure that members were cited, and we've got a link in the report to Scotland's data strategy for health and social care. That's jointly between the Scottish Government and COSLA, and they've released a progress update in the second year of that strategy. The 2025 update sets out some of the progress, which is including some of the governance structures, and there is a health and social care data board. For members noting, I am a member of that representing Social Work Scotland, but it's helpful to have that national oversight into that. There's also improved data access and use and standardisation that they have in place. We've given a link to the financial memorandum of the Commissioner for Older People Scotland calls for views, and as a partnership we'll be looking to ensure that we are able to respond to that within the timeframes recorded there. Unfortunately not had a chance to bring something to the IJB around what that response will be at this point. Under item 4, we have the information from the NHS Lothian Public Survey results. That was done for 2023 and is really conducted to improve understanding of health and wellbeing across the place. There are a number of highlights for West Lothian, certainly in terms of community safety. Residents in West Lothian report lower levels of perceived community safety. In terms of diet and nutrition, so fruit and veg consumption was lower in West Lothian, and for health inequalities, like other areas, the deprivation in West Lothian is linked to poorer mental and physical health, higher smoking and vaping, and lower physical activity levels. There was seen to be some access in terms of barriers to accessing some services, particularly in some of our more deprived areas. And in terms of mental wellbeing, residents in deprived areas were more likely to experience low mental wellbeing, loneliness and low life satisfaction. But as we say, there is further information that's contained within that report. We've got some details of the annual report here from the Mental Welfare Commission for Scotland, and we've got a link again in terms of access to that report. There were a number of findings in that around long-term hospitalisation for individuals, particularly with learning disability. And we do have our dynamic support register update on the agenda today. Some community-based care gaps and use of compulsory treatment in amongst that were some of the highlights. Mental Welfare Commission for Scotland do individual visits for mental health services, and the table under 6.1 highlights the areas that they have visited. I would say broadly, the feedback that we've had from the Mental Welfare Commission during this time is positive. There have been a couple of recommendations, but they have really commended the staff, their interaction with patients across all of these spaces, and the care and compassion that's shown in the care that is delivered. But there is further information on those in terms of the local visit report, and we've shared a link in the paper. Likewise, there is a Health and Social Care Sport Committee pre-budget scrutiny. This is around mental health budget, and the committee will be exploring different levels, and we are looking at how we can engage within that process. But I'm happy to take questions or comments on anything within the paper, Chair.
Thanks, Alison. Questions? John?
Thanks, Chair. You headed off my question on section 6, Alison, so thanks for that on the feedback. But if I go to item 2 on the data strategy, have we got any sense for what sort of impact that might have on us? I mean, the strategies are great, but it's going to ripple down. Since you're involved in it, quite if you're on the committee. Anything we need to be concerned about, start planning for?
I think not at this point in time. I think although it's called a health and social care strategy, I think at the moment there's more of a focus on the health data than the social care. And in part, I think that's because across Scotland, there is less of a collective view on social care. I do also co-chair with Scottish Government the Social Care Data Intelligence Programme Board, so we are looking at how we can enhance the social care data so that we can be more of an equal partner in amongst that. I think we have some really good examples in a West Lothian context of how we're doing that, and I've been linking our teams into some of that work that is happening. So I think to some extent from a health and social care partnership perspective, we would be well placed to understand what's coming out, and we'll be in a position to do that. And I think from having been involved in some of those discussions, we're also able to influence some of the things that we think are important for us to count and how we take that forward.
Thanks for that. I think that there are two aspects to this. I think, from what you've just said, if the emphasis is on healthcare, I think it would be great if we could take a lead on social care. And certainly, from what we heard at the NHS Lothian board meeting this morning, I think we should be looking at how we get involved in their activities around health data collection management. There was a lot of discussion about digital transformation. I think we should be trying to get closer to that and make sure IGB is properly represented. But the fact that social care is not getting as much attention, I would suggest it seems like fertile territory for us to get involved in. So I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, I would agree, and I'm involved in a couple of different work streams nationally to try and take that piece of work forward. Some of that's about agreeing what we think the most important things would be to count, and then getting agreement across Scotland about we will all count them and we will all count them in the same way, which means that actually we have a level of data that we can benchmark against. I feel like I'm in all of the data groups. I am also involved from a social work perspective on the local government benchmarking framework network. You'll be wondering when I do any work in West Lothian with the meetings I'm telling you I'm doing. So I'm also involved in the local government benchmarking framework, and that's also beginning to look now at the different things that we need to be focusing on, particularly in terms of adult social care that we're doing. So I'm into all of those conversations, John, and I think I would agree that I think it's really important that we do that. I don't think it's just social care data that's missing. I think things around district nursing, primary care, I know we've got some of that. I don't think that's as well understood nationally as it might be either. Yep. So I think it's an important time for us to be influencing and shaping the type of data that we have to better allow us to make informed decisions around this.
Absolutely agree. I think one positive I'm taking away is the fact that if you're going to do it in the same way across Scotland, that puts you immediately ahead of the health data analysis. because I think different boards are trying different ways of doing things. So I'd be very keen to encourage a cross-Scotland approach. Thanks, Alice.
Yvonne, were you coming in on the data question? Because I'm assuming you're not asking me a question about my report. So I was thinking you were coming in on John's element.
I was, Alison, thank you. So I suppose it was just to say, John, that we are well linked into a piece of work that NHS Lothian is doing with University of Edinburgh and Data Lock, and that is about using data analytics to try and predict the future health of our population by getting in and amongst some of the primary care data, some of the health data that we hold. So really just to give you that assurance that we are involved in some of that work as well from an NHS Lothian perspective to represent West Lothian.
I'd love
Sorry,
to know
Yvonne, I
more
don't
about that, Yvonne, in slower time. So maybe we take it offline, maybe you and I can have a chat so I can learn more about that. I know the data lock well. Thanks.
John, I was going to come in to say we are looking for the data lock group. We've had some conversation, Sharon and I in the background. They're going to come along to one of our extended management teams to have conversation, and we were looking at how we could link that into IJB, either through some of the development work or at a formal meeting here. So we will come back around that as well. Thank you for the prompt, Yvonne. I'd completely forgotten about that bit of work.
I think our use of the data across health and social care is got to be fundamental to helping us get over some of the challenges over the next couple of years. So I'm very keen to learn more and support these initiatives. Thanks.
Thanks, John. George?
Yeah, just to pitch into that conversation as well, I'd also like to get an offline discussion about prevention and how that aligns with the NHS Lothian. I think that's really important. So I think that should be something we should be debating after this meeting to try and see how we are aligning with the goals and the policies within NHS Lothian. My direct question, though, is in regard to financial memorandum of commissioning. Now, that's due to close on, I think it was September the 12th. You've got a very short time to actually deal with that and put in a submission on behalf of the IJB. You said you were going to put something around. Are you going to do that by email? Because there's no formal meeting and where that can come to. So it's how we will receive that, because I think it's important that we are cited on that, because the Commissioner is going to get quite a lot of, so we say, powers, including, promotion and other things, and also investigating the previous decisions taken in that area. So it'd be good if we could see that and we're cited to that, and how you propose to bring that to the board.
Yeah, we are happy. It would be via email prior to submission. We would. We'll look to give enough time so that you can come back with comments, so that it's not a fait accompli that we're giving you at that point in time for the 12th, but we will look to circulate to members before the 12th.
John, do you want to come back in?
Oh, yeah, it's just an observation for George. George, in the margins at the board meeting this morning, we had a chat about bringing prevention data in to complement Jim Crombie's performance model. So John Blaseby and I are looking to try and do something on that. And again, we mentioned the strong role that the IJBs will have in providing a lot of the data for that. So it is being discussed, but I think you're right. The IJB has a very strong role to play in that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Are there any comments? I think I would agree with John and George. I think we need a Scottish-wide data base to do anything that you've been suggesting, George, where they're doing initiatives which have helped end health inequalities. So we're looking at both the problem that's been identified, but where solutions have actually delivered what we've been trying to do. But if we don't put in the same information, then we get different results in different parts of the country, which clearly doesn't help our communities in these circumstances. So I think, the more that we can make things more common, but more detailed in the sense of getting the right information, we can make hopefully better informed decisions going forward. And that, is there can I move the recommendation, just to note the recommendation in the paper? Yeah. Takes us to item 8, Chief Finance Officer 2025-26 indicative forecast outturn Hamish.
Thanks, Tom. So the report presented to the board today is based on data up until the end of June. The figures presented from West Lothian Council in terms of adult social care services have been presented on a high level risk-based forecast after the first 3 months of the year, whereas the health figures have been provided as are based on a detailed forecast. Last year, just for context, we finished the year at £7.6 million of an overspend, and in order to get to a break-even position, we had to draw down significant amounts of funding from our own reserves, £4.9 million, and we received an additional payment of £2.7 million from West Lothian Council. Coming into this year, we managed to agree a balanced budget back in March, but the level of savings were unprecedented at £8.9 million to get to a balanced budget. And within that, the challenge of an adult social care is similarly unprecedented, with £4.8 million of savings required this year, which is almost double what we had to deliver last year. I suppose just because it's the start of the year, just to remind members that budget monitoring, the information around forecast and savings is provided to me as CFO from the partner finance teams within West Lothian Council and NHS Lothian. That's set out at section 2 and is in line with our integration scheme. In terms of the forecast that has been produced, which again I'll reiterate on the council side has been done at a high level risk-based forecast, we are forecasting a £1.5 million overspend for the end of the year, which is around 0.5% of the overall IGB budget. Adult social care is obviously projecting a break-even position, which hasn't moved since setting the budget. However, there are a number of areas of pressure within that, the main one being around housing with care staffing costs, and hope to bring back more information on that at the next update to the board in September, which will be based on a detailed forecast. The health position is underspent within the core HSCP services, largely because of an improvement in prescribing position as a result of additional Scottish Government funding. However, acute set-aside services remain a serious concern, serious overspend for us, largely due to the continuing pressures around emergency departments and minor injury units. In terms of the other key risks out with that, financial risks, we're now reporting a £800,000 overspend of hosted learning disabilities, and that's due to delays around closing an inpatient unit that was planned. Work is ongoing to progress the community accommodation for the individuals to allow them to move into their local community. Once that happens, the forecast overspend would reduce significantly. Focusing on savings, as I've already set out, the level of savings for this year are unprecedented at £8.9 million. We're currently projecting that we'll deliver 92% of our savings this year. There's a breakdown at table 2 in terms of how those savings sit across the themes within the HSCP and also within the hosted and set aside areas. I suppose, Tom, just to highlight to the board that whilst we are assuming, the partners are assuming significant delivery against savings for the whole year, in terms of actual delivered savings after 3 months of the year, we do have a significant amount of slippage so far, and there is a risk that this forecast will deteriorate. There are a number of savings, particularly within social care, that are phased towards the back half of the year in terms of delivery to allow us for lead time to deliver those savings. So I'd just like to highlight to the board the risk around the savings position. I suppose in summary, this is an indicative forecast position. The social care forecast has been done on a high level. The budget position is extremely challenging. and I'll be bringing back a detailed report in September, which will be based on information available up until the end of July. As ever, there'll be projections, so it'll be a forecast projection of where we think we'll be at the end of the year based on 4 months of data. I suppose moving on in terms of the sort of more medium-term picture, our financial position is extremely challenging based on the projections from March, which have not been updated by the partners. We face a in-year gap of 7.4 million in the next financial year and a further gap of 6.7 million in the financial year following that, the financial year 27-28. These projections are based on us being able to get to break even in each individual year on a recurring basis. So any failure to get to break even would only add to those budget gaps. I continue to work with the partners around updated funding offers and cost projections, but as I say, we've not had any updates since March, and budget planning and board development sessions are going to be budget planning will be a key theme of board development sessions over the next several months. And I suppose, Tom, just to highlight that I think it's imperative that we agree a consultation process over the autumn around potential savings plans for the next budget period, so from 26-27 onwards, because I think based on the current cost assumptions and planning assumptions that we have available to us, the board will be faced with decisions around capping or ceasing services in order to balance the budget. Happy to take any questions or comments on that.
Thanks, Hamish. John.
Thanks, Chair. Hamish, as you know, I'm a very strong supporter of the board sessions, keeping an eye on the budget. I think we should potentially add in monitoring progress on the savings. I think the earlier we know that there are issues in terms of achieving the savings we've already committed to, the better. And I'd also like to understand if there are mitigation plans in place for if some of the savings initiatives that we've already approved are running into trouble. So I think it would be good again to get on top of this and proactively monitor and manage it as part of the regular reviews. I don't know what you think, mate. Is that going to be of use? Is that possible?
Yeah, it's by all means possible to add in-year savings to the development sessions and progress and mitigations. Absolutely.
I think given the challenge and given that we have a duty to get to try and break even, I think we should be keeping an eye on all of these factors, not just planning for next year and beyond, but also ensuring we're delivering on what we committed to when we approved the last budget.
George. I beg your pardon, George. Sorry, George. Martin.
Just really building on what John said there. I mean, I think looking at the forecast is beginning to maybe start to look a wee bit difficult. I think it just makes it all the more clear that we need to get the savings that we've already established and make sure that we get them and bring them home, because it's not going to get any better.
Is that a question or a comment?
Sorry, it was just a comment.
I don't know.
Should have said that.
I was waiting for the question, so George.
Mine's is basically a comment as well, but it's mainly a comment towards how we actually do a process of actually engagement with the public and how we actually highlight the issues that we have. I think that's crucial moving forward, because we know we're going to be in trouble next year. We may get a balanced budget this year, but next year we're going to be in severe trouble. So we need to make the public aware of that and consult with them as to what their priorities are so they match our priorities. So I think that's really important that we get that conversation underway. So it's really a comment. I was going to frame it as a question to Hamish, but I've just made the comment.
That's fine. Stevie.
Thanks, Tom. Hamish, I've got a comment. I agree with George. I think if we're going to be making cuts all over the place, we have to communicate that, and the way we communicate it has to be open and honest and transparent. And I think sometimes with these consultations we say, what would you prefer? But in actual fact, we should just be telling people that these are the consequences. I've got a question here which might sound a bit silly, but what's the consequences of not breaking even, Hamish? What happens?
So at the minute, what we've done in the last 2 financial years is we've had agreements in place with the partners around additional funding. We've also still got reserves, but I suppose I think what you're getting at is, and please tell me if I'm misinterpreting this, but if we don't have reserves, our integration scheme is very clear that if there is an overspend in adult social care, that overspend sits with West Lothian Council, and if there's an overspend in NHS Lothian services, that overspend sits with NHS Lothian. So we don't have any. The IGB doesn't have a bank account. Ultimately the pressure sits with the individual partner. It reverts back to them. There are no risk share agreements in place between NHS Lothian or West Lothian Council. It's a very clear black and white integration scheme.
All right, okay, that makes sense. Thanks for that, Hamish.
John.
But just to echo both George and Stevie's point that I think communicating to the population what we are having to look at and the potential impact, well, not the potential, the actual impact that it will have of each of the choices, I think is absolutely fundamental. So, and I would also agree that the messaging needs to be clear and straightforward so that people understand the position we're in, the decisions that we're being forced to take, and the consequences of those decisions on our population and the patients that we serve.
John. Jad.
Thanks, Chair. Hamish, just a question on prescribing. You seem to be upbeat a little bit on prescribing, but this morning at the NHS Lothian board, unless I misunderstood, they were quite downbeat about the prescribing costs. Have I misunderstood, or is it?
I mean, apologies if I've came across as upbeat, but I suppose we were. If you look at last year, our prescribing position, it's not something that I'm usually accused of as being upbeat. Last year, our prescribing position was upwards of £4 million of an overspend, and you'll see from the report we're down at about £1.5 million. The reason for that is because the Scottish Government passed the cross uplift for both pay and non-pay, so we were able to put £2 million of additional funding into prescribing. So that is why our position has improved. But the Lothian figures will not be an exact extrapolation of West Lothian being 21% of 100%. It'll be a bit more complex than that. But if you do that math, you can see how at an NHS Lothian board level, the prescribing figure is still very significant. Albeit it has improved. And I suppose, as always, there are things coming down the road. People will probably be aware of the GLP-1s, the drugs focused on obesity, which is a big unknown. But we don't have an agreed model or pathway for delivery for that within NHS Lothian at this point that I am aware of. Planning is still ongoing for that. So it will always be, I don't foresee a day where it's not a big financial risk for us and something that's very uncertain because of the volatility, the wider market conditions, the impact of things going on in other parts of the world, as well as new developments such as those that I've just referenced. But to look at where we were, because of the new funding that's came in, it's a much smaller financial overspend than it was a few months ago.
John.
Yeah, I'm Jad. I'm not sure I heard that the NHS Lothian position was upbeat. I think that they were trying to pass the buck to the IJBs, or at least give us more of the blame. So I think once again prescribing has become a sort of murky battleground for a lot of discussions. But the positive thing is that Martin has volunteered a rerun of the prescribing brief that was given to us a few months ago, which I think would be a positive contribution into NHS Lothian. So there's maybe some good news there.
Be sure if Hamish wants to answer that or he's stunned.
Sorry, I hadn't.
It was more an
question
observation, mate, than a question.
Martin.
No, just to say, I'm not going to rise to John's bait.
Yeah. You health board people, you're in jokes, oh dear. It'd be fair to say, Hamish, that effectively we're on a financial treadmill, which just never seems to slow down. You're reporting in the budget that we're attempting to implement already a slippage in the first quarter, which clearly is not, I'll say helpful, but I think that is underscoring that. And you're reporting elsewhere that there are overspends. And in that background, we've got depleted and reducing reserves, which is going to limit any flexibility in trying to maintain a service or indeed deal with an unexpected emergency in that respect. And the only solution to this financial treadmill is it's recognised by Scottish Government that a basic fundamental change in how they fund health boards, IGBs, councils who are responsible for service delivery. Otherwise, this financial treadmill is just part of the day-to-day stuff, and it doesn't allow us to do any improvements unless, no pun intended, purely by accident that these things happen. So basically my question is, we need to be better funded to stop this pattern of your reporting, to be honest.
We face a rising demographic, increasing costs, stubborn inflation, and funding is not keeping pace with that. But I mean, personally, Tom, I don't have a solution for that. I mean, what I can do in my role and what I do is have discussions with both directors of finance around the funding offer that we get from the partners, which I continue to do so, and to highlight the risks around some of the savings that we are forced to make due to the funding shortfalls. Happy to take, if there's anything you want to follow up on that, but I mean, that's what I can do in my role.
No, from your role, it's clearly to report what our financial situation is, and what you're reporting, from my interpretation, is a firefighting exercise, to be crude about it, and dealing with things which flag up, but with a limited financial resource to actually have a consistency of what we're actually trying to do. And that cycle needs to stop, but nobody at the appropriate level seems to be either recognising that and actually doing something about it. And all we're really doing is managing a reduction in service at the end of the day, because there is no financial resource going to be there to continue. And that's the cycle I'm meaning, that whilst you're reporting these circumstances, there doesn't seem to be a factor that's going to help to change that. And from my perspective, it can only be that we are better funded to deliver the services and then improve services that government's wanting, by actually they have to give that additional resource. And rather than just say it's a highlight, it needs to be seen that this money is to solve a problem, and we don't seem to be getting it. And with respect to you, that's all you're really doing, is giving us the dire consequences rather than how we can manage to improve services, which I think that's what we're all about. But, and I accept, Hamish, that you can't give us that solution. John.
I just really wanted to build on that, Tom. I think, and this goes back to my previous comment about getting the messaging out. I think we need to articulate this position. If I take your firefighting analogy, the fires are getting bigger and bigger, and we're being given less and less water, and we're being asked to put the fires out, and really our ability to be an effective firefighter is being constrained. Hamish is right. The demographics are against us. And the funding is reducing. We're being asked to make efficiencies, which is really a cut in the budget. So they're asking us to do more with less, and that's just, it's not achievable. There's a lot of pressures on, costs are going up. And there's more people. There's more complex conditions, and yet we're being asked to do more with less. And I think, it's an observation I've made before. I think that the exec team are having to work harder and think smarter and work faster to try and deal with a deteriorating situation.
Tony Boyle. You're on mute, Tony. Not you.
Can you hear me now? Right, thank you.
Yep.
This is a comment rather than a question. If you're all right with that at this point.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I was at Winchborough Community Council meeting on Monday night, and it's probably the best attended meeting I have. Well, it is best attended community council meeting I've been at. There were almost 100 members of the community attended it, and there were two reasons. But one of them was because there have been issues around doctors' surgeries, doctor services, and there was two GPs there from the practice which covers Winchborough and Kirtliston, and practice manager. The GP defended, saying by his hands were tied. They were absolutely trying to give the best treatment and service possible, but although they had increases year on year for the last X number of years, those were always less than they actually needed. So the situation was deteriorating. And he, and the other GP as well, pointed the finger up where the problem was, which was Edinburgh. And I was sort of shocked to get a meeting where, if you want, a GP didn't actually mention any political party, but he said that that is where the problem lay, that they had been given money and given probably a bigger settlement, but they were choosing to cut stuff going out to doctor surgeries, and they were having to manage with the resources and the money that they got. And he had the meeting in his hand at the end of that. It could have been potentially very aggressive, but he there spelt it out to the members of the public exactly what the reason was and why their services weren't exactly as good as they had been, but they were striving to give the best they could under the present financial climate. So it was really interesting. But thanks. I said that was just a comment. So he is reflecting exactly, from a GP's point of view, exactly where we are on the IJB. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, Tom. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. John.
I'd like to build on that, Tony. I think that's a great example, and I think it points to the fact that we've got professionals right across West Lothian who understand the position, and I think we should be utilising that common shared awareness and belief to build the narrative when we go out. And I think Stevie's point about trying to make it as open and transparent as possible, this speaks to it. If we are all pointing out the same issues and showing the challenges that we have to deal with every day, and put it in a clear fashion, the same way that this GP did. I think that's the sort of narrative I'd like to see coming out from the IJB.
Thanks, John. Are there any further questions, comments, in whatever order? In which case, if there's none, can I ask that well, we've considered the first recommendation.
Calculations, but so there's.
Sorry, I thought somebody was coming in there. Apologies. We've considered recommendation 1 in our discussions, and can we note points 2 and 3 in the recommendation? Thank you. Item 9, review of Rosemount Café. Rob Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the proposed budget saving measure relating to Rosemount Café and seeks a decision regarding its closure. Members will be aware that the proposed closure of the cafe formed part of the unprecedented level of measures referred to in the previous agenda item required to achieve total savings of £8.9 million in 2025-2026. The IJB requested additional actions to be progressed to inform the decision regarding this proposal. The report confirms the outcome of these actions, detailing that an alternative provider was not identified during the agreed timeframe, and the targeted engagement has been progressed with tenants and community groups. Section 2 of the report provides additional detail regarding the engagement activity, the views of attendees, and the agreed outcome. This was for a representative group to meet with a business growth advisor to consider if an alternative model could be delivered to achieve a cost-neutral position. The proposed model suggests significantly reduced staffing costs and increased projected income, however, does not achieve a cost-neutral position. Whilst the projected reoccurring annual loss is relatively low, it is based upon a range of assumptions and risks that could significantly impact the indicative position. These are detailed within section 2.5 of the report. Both the integrated impact assessment and consumer duty impact assessment have been updated to reflect the outcome of this most recent engagement and are appended to this report. Whilst it is recognised that the cafe is an important focal point for tenants and visitors, this further period of targeted engagement has not resulted in an alternative cost-neutral model of delivery. As noted, the closure of the cafe forms part of a range of measures to achieve savings of £8.9 million in this financial year. There are no alternative options that can be provided as a replacement saving or to bridge the projected shortfall that would not impact upon the delivery of care and support services. It is therefore recommended that the closure of the cafe is progressed as detailed within the appended direction. The previous reported actions to support tenants that wish to order meals remain in place, as does access to the communal spaces and meeting rooms. Alternative positions remain available for the staff that will be impacted by this recommendation. Chair, I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Rob. Are there any questions, colleagues? Tony Boyle.
Thanks, Chair. If the decision is taken to close the cafe, right, the discussions that took place the other day, are we then definitely that all the equipment in the kitchen area, food preparation area, will be left so that community groups could go in and use it? That's out with meals being provided.
In relation to the full extent of all equipment that remains within the cafe, that would be subject to review and detailed inventories taken following the closure of the cafe. Obviously, there will continue to be a number of pieces of static equipment that relate to the preparation of small meals or making of coffee and tea facilities will remain available within the site.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Right.
Any other questions, colleagues? Can I just expand on that question? Effectively, the accommodation could then be used as any sort of community centre where you use the facilities which are there. So you use a function hall or a lounge area, kitchen if need be. So in a sense, the facility is still there to be used by community groups who currently use it. The only difference is that meals could well be on a self-catering basis rather than being provided by staff, paid staff there. So in that respect, should an organisation book it and wish to prepare hot meals themselves, they would be able to do that as part of any let arrangement that be to use the kitchen for that purpose.
Yeah. Chair, in relation to the community groups that access the shared facilities at this minute in time, they are not impacted by this measure at all. What the impact would be on those groups is the cafe being available to fulfil those refreshment requirements that they currently have. Should the groups wish to continue to use any of the equipment that remains within there would be consideration that would need to be progressed with our colleagues in property services to make sure that there were the appropriate risk assessments, etc., in place to enable people to use the equipment that is present on site.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks to Rob. I think my question's along very similar lines. So I suppose what I wondered is if a decision was taken today to close the cafe, but there was an intention from a community group, perhaps the one that has previously we've had discussions with, if there's an intention for them to come forward with a different costed proposal, and would the council still be open to discussion and consideration of allowing that transfer of the asset?
Here, in relation to asset transfer, etc., I'm not briefed to be able to make comment on that.
Sorry, Rob, I don't think I've phrased that properly. It's not transfer of the asset necessarily, but I guess what I'm trying to say in layman's terms is if a community group came forward at a later date and wished to operate the cafe on their own basis, would we still be willing to have discussions with them around that?
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the space that remains available and the groups that access it, they have been obviously supported by the Business Gateway in relation to the development of the potential proposal. That support remains available for them to access at any which point they choose to do so, or indeed if another group wish to make contact to consider how best that space could be utilised, or any proposals they may have for it.
Dave Huddleston. Just put yourself on mute, Dave.
Notice in the report, the point 3.3, the community group were involved and they managed to get the assistance of the Business Gateway an alternative delivery model, but the shortfall was 14.5 grand. Is that being further exploited in as much as that's a massive saving they've already made? What does this 14.5 grand shortfall actually count? Is it too many days opening, too many hours opening, or that sort of thing? Has that been explored, or?
Yes, Chair, that has been explored with the Business Gateway officers that worked alongside the representative group in terms of the production of their proposed alternative model. Section 2.4 details what that model looks like in broad terms. Ultimately, the shortfall relates to the costs of staffing, which are significantly reduced from the current staffing model, and also costs associated to deliver that. However, the shortfall relates to the projected income that would be achieved during an annual period to offset the costs of the staffing. I think it's important to note as well that with any business model, there is obviously risks and assumptions that need to be made in relation to its development. For me as an officer presenting this to you today, it's important for me to highlight the risks in relation to that, given the saving measure that is attributed to this and the potential impact that it may have on other areas of care and support, or indeed IJB reserves. The risks that are detailed there in section 2.5 pull out some of the assumptions and also the risks associated with those. In general terms, reducing the CAFE significantly from 4 FTE to 1.5 FTE obviously brings a very different staffing model to what exists currently, and the ability of that staffing model to be flexible enough to meet the requirements and delivery of a CAFE. Whilst they may be deliverable, there is risk that they may also not achieve what they intend to do. There is also the increase associated with the pricing model that sits in and around the products that are sold within the CAFE. Again, there is an assumption in the model made that they would increase by 50% the costings, the cost to an individual purchasing a particular item from the CAFE. It is unknown how that would impact sales and whether it would reduce, increase, or remain neutral. As well as that, I have pulled out the challenges that may exist in terms of maintaining the sales at the current level, and I mean what occurred during the period of 24-25. The CAFE, the proposal is based upon maintenance of those existing sales and increasing sales alongside the components of the increased charging. I hope that sets out the detail and answers the question, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. George?
A process question, Alan, to be honest with you, but I think it's important that people understand the process, and my understanding is correct. If we make this decision today, we then give a direction to the actual council. The council, who are the owners of the facility, then can maintain that discussion and these debates within the communities as potential alternative uses for the site. Is that correct?
So there's a bit in all of that somebody else may wish to come in terms of governance, but my understanding this is an IJB decision with regards the ongoing operation of the CAFE, whether it remains open or closes to achieve the saving as detailed within the report. The elements, so that would be for the IJB to decide, and there would be a direction then issued, the same as there are for all savings measures to West Lothian Council. That direction is attached to the report before members today. In relation to the other components as to how the space may or may not be used in the future, and any representations, they would come via the council.
That's fine. I just wanted that clarity that these conversations, because the assets held within the council, can continue at a later date, but we have to balance our books, so we cannot deviate from that, but the direction would be given to the council. That's all I wanted to establish. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, George. Are there any other questions? Are there any comments? I would like to make a couple of comments. Sorry, George, you want to come in? You're on mute, George. That's you.
I know. Sticky button today, I'm afraid to say. Yeah, I mean, I really sympathise with the community in this area. I know how valuable, coming from that background, the community facilities are in these types of areas. I've faced it within my own complex. I live in a shelter complex. I've faced it and I understand that this really does cause long-term problems. But the actual reality is that it's financially not being able to be maintained. It's going to be a drain on the budget going forward. So we can't do anything other than give a direction back to hopefully then have a conversation within council. But I totally sympathise with the actual community in this area. I totally understand why they would want to save it, but we cannot just be mindful of that. We have to take an overall decision as to how we can carry on potentially making losses, because we can't. We're not in a position to do that. So very sympathetic, but I mean, it's a direction of travel we have to go down to actually do that. And I think there's been a lot of debate, a lot of consultations, there's been a lot of delay in trying to get that point, to try and give that opportunity to maintain it. So with regret, I just wanted to highlight that it's a horrible situation and the community have my full sympathy in it.
Sure. Connie Boyle.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I know we've got to make the savings, and my question around the equipment earlier on, if we make a decision today to close, right, I would like the equipment, saying about some of it, and we have to do a review of it, but I would like for a period of time, say 6 months, for that equipment to be there, so that if a group or organisation comes in and says we can run it, that we haven't shut the door to them doing that today by removing equipment that could be crucial in taking that forward.
I think, Tony, that is not in our gift. No, but we can't make a decision and then qualify by telling the council that they have to do certain other things. I take the point that you're saying, but I think as part of this decision process, we can't, I would suggest, qualify the future of the building on that basis.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Are there any other comments? I would like to make a couple. Wait, come back in.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I was going to make a comment, but you can go first if you want.
No, please.
Yeah, I guess my comment was just that echo George's point. I had perhaps naively hoped we would get to a position today where we would have a third sector organisation that was able to take this over. I guess in my head, this circle that I struggle to square is why social policy, when there's so much pressure on social care, you only have to talk to half a dozen people or read a newspaper to find out how much pressure there is on that, why they are operating and expected to maintain a cafe. I understand the huge benefits to it, absolutely I do, but I just think that that's when we're struggling to get carers and social workers, I just think that that's out of the purview and the remit of what we've got, particularly with the financial envelope. So I suppose sympathy with residents, absolutely, and also disappointment that we weren't quite able to get it over the line is what I would express today.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I find myself reluctantly making a decision, but in some respects, the opportunities which we have are limited. In the background to this, on the 19th of June, I attended a meeting of IJB chairs and vice chairs by teams with the Cabinet Secretary for Health, and I took the opportunity to raise the issue. And partly because the Cabinet Secretary at that time had made reference to a visit to the Blackburn Partnership Centre, and I connected that to that is what we have been trying to do in West Lothian for ages, having co-location of services and innovations. One of the innovations was Café at Rosemount and indeed elsewhere in other accommodations. But the innovations at the time are now become unsustainable for us. And when it becomes between, in some respects, a social facility rather than a care facility, then I think the hard decision is being made. I attended the public meeting on the 23rd of June at Rosemount Café, which was well attended. And I appreciate there were views expressed that we should maintain the facility. And one of the members of the public, when it was mentioned about the financial situation, threw into the conversation about that IJB, etc., got above inflation funding. which seems to be, well, that's okay then. We've got sufficient funding to do everything that we've done the year before. But unfortunately, that is really not the case, because health inflation is bigger than domestic inflation. So that, to me, whilst I could understand it, it doesn't reflect the basic funding that we've mentioned previously. With regard to the future of the accommodation, I think the accommodation is of the highest quality. And I think, and I mentioned it again at the public meeting, that perhaps the cafe area, with the kitchen included, should maybe be a base for local organisations to be in, rather than come to use it as an activity space. And I think it's a different model that's needed. But I think, unfortunately, it's not a model for us to develop. And indeed, some of the suggestions about savings, etc., it doesn't meet the conditions when we went out to have further meetings with community groups on 2 occasions that we did do that extension. There is no viable option come forward. There is an option to carry out a change to what is delivered there, but it still comes at a cost, staffing costs of £56,000, which need to be borne up. And I have to say, some of the costs on potential income regarding food, etc., I just wonder if that will actually generate the income which is there. And I think managing the IJB risk, I think, to be honest, it is a risk which, in our financial circumstances, we kind of continue to bear. So on that basis, I have come, in some respects, with other members, to the same conclusion that we would prefer that this is kept open, but perhaps it's no longer an IJB responsibility that we have to deliver, given the other pressures on the budget. But I think the building does have a future, and hopefully local organisations can adapt and use it in a way in which actually continues to meet the requirements of the local community and residents. In saying that then, colleagues, I am going to move the recommendation set out in the paper, that we note the updated position detailed in the report, and that we agree that the amended savings directions are issued to Lothian Council in respect of the operational delivery of the savings measures to close Rosemount Café. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it, Tom.
Thank you, John. Is there a contrary position? I don't see any contrary position. Thank you, colleagues. The decision is as set out in the paper to close Rosemount Café. Alison?
It was, thank you for that. It was just to note that we need to make a slight amendment to the wording in the direction. The paper mentions a closure date, and actually it is before we're able to formally notify the council of the closure through their governance processes. So I need to make a slight tweak to the wordings, and was just wanting to ensure that board members were happy for me to do that on that direction. It was an oversight when we had submitted those papers, but if you're happy with that, we will ensure that that direction is issued to the council appropriately and goes through their formal governance routes as well.
Yes, I think that is proper, that the governance rules are adhered to on the decision. Okay. I don't see any comments coming forward on that, so thank you, Alison, for that. I can read my agenda. Sorry, it's the paper all over the place. It takes us to item 10. Update on the development of West Lothian Primary Care Strategy 2025-26. Neil Ferguson.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. So the purpose of this paper is to present the proposed Primary Care Strategy 2025 to 2028 to the board today for ratification. paper itself recalls the board's previous support to develop the strategy, noting the importance of primary care services in improving health and well-being of our population and acknowledging the trend of rising challenges across our services. Section 3 outlines the commitment to align the strategy with the ambitions of the IJB strategic plan, which are to improve health inequalities through partnership working, to adopt and promote a home-first approach, to enable high-quality care by investing in our workforce. And Section 4 summarises the engagement and consultation undertaken as part of the development of this strategy. In order to reach as many invested stakeholders as possible, a series of presentations and discussions were held in a number of forums in order to reach representatives across the HSCP, across GP practice, acute NHS care, third sector partners and local community representation. Additionally, an online survey was promoted and made available to the public and staff alike. A report of its findings are included in today's papers. And considering the feedback obtained as part of our engagement, there were 3 significant findings influencing development of the proposed strategy, which is also included in today's papers. Number 1, there was overwhelming support to consider a wider, more integrated interpretation of primary care, recognising the valuable contribution of a wide range of services and supports. Number 2, in considering the key focus areas, there was overwhelming support that each of the 5 proposed areas should be included. Those are mental health, ageing and frailty, chronic disease management, carer support, children and adolescents. And number 3, in considering the strategic objectives, there was overwhelming support that each of the 6 proposed strategic objectives were included, and they are prevention and early intervention, access to primary care, integrated care delivery, enhancing workforce capacity and well-being, addressing health inequalities, and promoting technology and innovation. The ask of the board today is to accept the recommendation to ratify the proposed primary care strategic plan for 2025 to 2028, which is included in your packs. It's also to note our intention to develop an associated delivery plan based on the approved strategy, which will be presented to the board in the autumn of 2025. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Neil. Are there any questions? Amjad.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Neil. Very comprehensive paper, and it'd be good to see the deliverables. And obviously what we need to see with this is money and resources of all kinds, both staff and money going into primary care so that we can focus on things like prevention, which have already mentioned by other people, prevention and health promotion, rather than even more money going into expensive secondary care. And as a result, I think primary care suffers. At the moment, over 90% of funding is geared towards secondary care services, and I don't think we can continue that if we want to reduce costs and move more of the care near people's homes. So I look forward to the next paper on deliverables to see how we're going to achieve this exciting time. Thank you.
Thank you, Amjad. John.
Neil, a very comprehensive report. I must admit, I haven't read every word in exact detail, but for me, this is another part of the prevention approach that I think we should be starting to explore at an IJB level. We mentioned data, and we talked about that with NHS Lothian this morning. There's been a lot of discussion about public health. Government is very keen to try and place more emphasis in diagnosis and treatment within the community. I just wonder, firstly, how do you see this strategy integrating with some of those initiatives? And can we use this as the basis to start looking at how we might have a broader integrated approach to prevention and to improving public health?
Thank you for that. Yes, the 2 themes that you've mentioned there, integrated working and early prevention, is something that came through. It's obviously been included in the strategy, but there were comments on the consultation as well that have come through in that way. In terms of early discussions about following those things through, when we align our primary care strategy, which goes with the rest of the HSCP's innovations, in particular about our hospital at home service and how it links with the home first principles and the locality and intermediate care working approach. What we've come to realise is that there are opportunities to improve our early interventions and early identification of people by focusing on the various touch points that we have available to us and sharing information across those boundaries. So we have lots of people, we have lots of staff seeing people every day, and while they are there anyway, there are opportunities for them to be taking in different pieces of information and sharing back. So that would be one of our initial reflections in terms of moving forward.
I'm just wondering, I don't know, I'll pull Alison reluctantly into this. If we're doing development sessions which largely look at budgets and numbers, I'm just wondering if we can add elements into that discussion that says there are new approaches. So how can the strategy and other strategies that we're pulling together contribute to us getting more value for money or being more effective? And it would maybe help either offset some of the tough decisions we have to make, or underscore, the priorities we're making in terms of harsh decisions that we have to make. So, is this something that we could look at? Is more cross-pollination and more integration? I think Neil is right. It starts to come out in the report, but I'm just wondering if we need to be a bit more ambitious and aggressive in trying to do that.
Certainly, John, happy for us to look at how we weave that in. I think you're right. We need to look at all of the creative ways that we can do to continue to deliver services in an appropriate way in a West Lothian context, deliver as best we can for our population, but obviously meet that target of delivering against a balanced budget. So I know we've spoken about the sessions having more of a deep dive into certain areas, so that will be an opportunity for us to do that.
Thank you. David Lawson.
Yes. I'm wondering if there's any provision going to be built into this strategy for the people with inability to operate technical systems. I come across this quite a lot in my area, and I'm really concerned that we're moving forward at a fast pace, which is good. I mean, I'm not knocking the technology at all. I'm not knocking the idea. But what I'm concerned about is the people that we leave behind because they don't know how to deal with it. And is there a provision that we can have a helpline, an advisor, etc., or a living person in an office somewhere that answers questions on a pretty basic level, in as much as I know several people that have been to the advice shop and all these other places, and the only response they get is look at the website, go to the website, and they can't do it, and that really concerns me when we're talking about health and well-being. So, if in all these proposals, I never actually see a backup that if you can't do it, if it can't work for you, is that something that should be considered as we go forward?
Yeah, if it's okay, I'm happy to come back on that.
Yeah, please do, Neil.
Thanks very much for that, Dave. I think it's a point well made. In particular, when we talk about digital inclusion, just as you say, we need to include in our thinking what that means for people that don't support digital or have trouble with digital. And so in a practical sense, it's not as simple for us to turn every appointment into an online appointment, because there's elements of patient choice here where people prefer face-to-face. So it's really to just say that element we want to build in, of course, because there's another strong theme, which is patient choice, which is patient empowerment, which is education to make sure people get to the right place. It's all included. If I expand on the digital element, what you're really talking about there is exclusion of certain people in in the strategy. And we note from some of our comments that while it's great that we have identified key areas to focus on, we also had comments that said, well, let's make sure that we don't exclude anybody by over focusing, if you like, on certain areas. So that's very much in the thinking.
Hamish. Sorry, Hamish, I don't know if you were wanting to come in to answer a point earlier. My apologies.
No, it's okay, thanks. I suppose it's an apologies for being a pedant around this, but just we're in a public meeting. Just to Amjad's point about 90% of funding being spent in secondary care. So the Scottish Government have a long-standing commitment which relates to health boards, not the IJBs. So just to be clear, around 10% plus being spent in primary care. That does not mean that 90% of the funding is spent in secondary care. A lot of funding is spent in community settings, district nursing, health visiting, community midwifery, community mental health. So just to be clear on that point, it's not 10% primary care and 90% secondary care. The secondary care split is probably less than 50% the last time that I saw the cost book data that NHS boards produce, but it's probably, that sort of discussion. Normally I'd say it's something that might be interesting to get into a development session, but I think it's probably more applicable through the health board means if the non-executive directors are keen to get into that, because a lot of secondary care is not delegated to the IJB. So apologies for being extremely pedantic on that, but I just wanted to clarify.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Hamish. Neil, I'm just wondering, when looking at it on page 13, where it's colour coding communities east-west and by SIMD zones. Some are isolated and some would appear to be a sizable bit of larger communities, which, whilst there will be health issues, it may not be something that we can directly help eradicate. In some respects, it's perhaps former industries and former employees with related issues. It may well be that some of the health issues are housing issues. So how do we bring these to be part of the solution? And it's just going back to the second part of your recommendation about associated implementation action plan. Is that in conjunction with partners, or is it just what we're trying to do, or this is how we can help to support residents with their health issues, but it would help if other things in the life was better?
Yvonne, do you want me to come in? Want to go on that first, or were you wanting to come in?
Well, I'm happy to come in, Neil, if that's all right, and just add to this. So I think the important thing for us to remember is that this is the primary care strategy, and I absolutely take on board the comments around early intervention, prevention, but I suppose we also have to be mindful of the social determinants of health, and that is a community response that's needed in terms of that preventative space and tackling some of that inequality. And I think that's what the chair is alluding to in some of the comments. So I think, for example, community planning partnerships have a very key role to play in this, the multi-agencies around the table around tackling some of those social determinants of health. So I suppose it's just been really clear that this is about what we can do in a primary care setting, but we acknowledge that there's far broader work to be done from a community perspective. Sorry, I don't know if there's anything you'd want to add to that.
Maybe only for kind of clarity where it boils down in an operational sense, we've been really trying to link with public health to make sure that we have a better appreciation of where our SIMD data is sitting at the minute, so that we at least acknowledge that when we're forming services. So that was really the practical interpretation of what we're trying to get out of in terms of developing a plan and moving to the deliverables as we talk about having different perspectives in the room. So I think the plan will be an HSCP plan, but we won't develop it in isolation. We'll continue with the engagement actually that has strengthened over the course of developing the strategy in the first place, because we had really great participation from lots of stakeholders involved in from all sorts of areas.
Just a wee bit, just to follow on that. So, and I was at a SES Trans meeting, and there's a paper on health inequalities due to transport, where a patient, etc., couldn't get to an appointment, whether it was at a particular bad time or they didn't have the financial resource for the bus fare, rail fare, whatever. But it was part of me thinking, that's identified there's a problem. The problem is a better public transport system, which is generations away. But in the sense of, if that's a problem of people getting to healthcare, is there a situation where healthcare can be delivered more locally? And I'm just showing my age that some of I don't remember honestly, but as a baby I was taken to the local community centre that had the district nurse for my being weighed, given olive oil and orange juice and that type of thing. It's that type of situation, because in the social situation, if money is the reason why people are not going, how easy that we can actually take that element out by we go out to that and deliver that service locally rather than expecting patients to come. We're going to say, well, there's no good reason, I don't mean that, but where it's just easier to do it. But if there's more complicated tests needed in St John's, for example, that's why it's there. If it's just a simple sugar lump, then that would be better there. And I'm watching heartbeat and that type of things as well, so I'm reminiscing. So apologies for that. But is that what we're going to try and do? That we change the nature of how we've always done things as in the health service. It's maybe reinventing things which work, but for different reasons we don't do anymore. It's just, how do we do that? John?
I'm just going to build on that, Tom. I think, and also what Yvonne and Neil have said, is I think there is a really good opportunity now, and I think this is where the IJB could really demonstrate value, is maybe not the integrator, but the facilitator, and we understand a lot of the problems, but I think we could be innovative in trying to propose some solutions. And I think if it is a question of reinventing or going back to approaches that worked in the past, but then seeing how we could supercharge them by bringing in some of the modern capabilities that we have. I think that's a sweet spot that the IJB was almost intended for, and it is that sort of health, social care, understanding council services, third sector. We sit right at the centre of all of these initiatives, and I think we can build on the experiences. And as I say, we may not be responsible for knitting them all together, but we could at least facilitate that integration. So it's back to the point I first made to Neil, is how do we take these strategies, knit them together? It might be that there's just quick links between them, but I could see a much more integrated approach, which I would hope would be more effective and add more value for money. So I think that's something we should be starting to think about as a group.
Thanks, John. Are there any, sorry, Yvonne?
I think it was really just to come back on John's point, and I suppose that's the whole essence of our IJB strategic plan, John, is around home first principles and delivering as much care and support as close to home as possible. So that is at the forefront of our minds when we are developing some of this work that is about, you need to be in a hospital, yes or no. If not, where is the best place to deliver that? So we are starting very much with that person at the centre and trying to deliver those services as close to home as possible. So yeah, that's certainly our strategic direction.
I'm not criticising Yvonne, and I think I'm really trying to say that we should take that and try and supercharge it. And I think we shouldn't be coy about having, standalone strategies, and we should be really emphasising the fact that we've got a unifying strategy, and this is how it all knits together. because I think we're talking ourselves into violent agreement, but that's where the value lies, is actually doing all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Thanks. Any more questions or any comments? I think this is a good paper, and I think look forward to your implementation action plan in the autumn, Neil, and see where we go after that. Okay, can we agree the recommendations, colleagues? Thank you. Paper 11, development of HSCP workforce plan 2025-28. Lorna Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides an update to the board on the development of the new HSCP workforce plan for 2025 to 28 and presents a draft plan for comment. HSCPs are required by Scottish Government to publish workforce plans every 3 years with an annual update between full 3-year plans. Workforce plans are a key enabler of the IGB's strategic delivery plans and sets out the workforce challenges, opportunities and potential solutions that can be delivered locally to support a robust, sustainable health and social care workforce within West Lothian, and this is across both delegated and non-delegated services. The refreshed action plan was developed and published in 2024 as part of the annual update for the Workforce Plan 2022 to 2025. The annual update at that time identified a number of priorities set out in section 2.4 of the report, including working with external partners on a number of cross-cutting workforce issues, prioritising the support and development of our staff, and closely engaging staff in the development of the new workforce plan. The approach to the draft plan, attached as Appendix 1, has been informed by engagement with staff, partners, the Strategic Planning Group and senior managers. A survey was issued to all HSCP staff and to external partners, including commissioned service providers, third sector organisations and the local employability partnership. 80 members of staff responded to the survey and they broadly agreed that the priorities and existing actions were appropriate. However, a large proportion responded that they were unsure, potentially indicating that staff didn't resonate with the priorities or didn't see the relevance of those actions to their own role. So this is something that we're taking cognizance of in developing the new plan, and we want it to be, we want staff to see themselves in the new plan. A series of online workshops for staff took place to further explore the themes coming out of the initial survey, which were wellbeing and support, career development and progression, workforce communication and engagement, resource constraints, integration and collaboration, and digital transformation. So a couple of themes there that have come up already today. The full summary of the engagement to date is included in the draft workforce plan from page 4. Workshops were not very well attended, and engagement from partners has been quite limited in terms of that input. So it's proposed that further engagement be undertaken with both staff and partners to develop the plan and associated action plan before bringing a final draft to the board for approval on the 24th of September. Following further engagement, sections 9 to 12 of the plan will be populated and will set out what we have achieved to date and what we intend to achieve over the next 3 years. So this will be accompanied by a detailed action plan. As in previous years, some of the challenges outlined require a national response, and the new plan will acknowledge this whilst focusing on what is within our gift to deliver and what actions will have the most meaningful impact within our finite resources. In conclusion, the board is asked to note that the development of the new workforce plan is underway, to agree the broad approach and proposed structure of the plan, and to agree that the final plan be submitted to the board at its next meeting following further engagement with staffing partners. Happy to take any comments or questions.
Thanks, Lorna. Are there any questions? Let's see. Oh, John.
It was just an observation, Lorna. Thanks for the report. Again, I haven't read every word, but I'll get round to it. Why was there such low attendance and lack of engagement? Is there any reason behind that?
So I think everybody's very busy. I think workforce planning is a big part of my role, and it's a lot of interest to me. But perhaps not of enough interest to staff to take time out of their day to come along to a workshop. What I'm going to do next time around is go to the staff. So go to invite myself along to team meetings and just go to where they are. I think, as I mentioned, staff are perhaps struggling to see where they sit in the current workforce plan. So it's not necessarily obvious to someone who's not yet come along to a workshop. How is it relevant to them, and what sort of input are they going to be able to have into that? So I'm going to try something a bit different before we finalise the plan.
Okay, thanks, Lorna. Lauren?
It was just to come in on that again, John. I suppose it was just to flag that the timing of the engagement really coincided with one of the big pieces of transformation work that was going on across our teams in terms of multidisciplinary working and teams movement to locality. And I think in general the kind of feedback is, as Lorna suggested, that it's about going to staff within their own team meetings. So that was part of the reason why we didn't bring the full report here. Yeah. We recognise that was a bit of a gap, but we want to make sure that the actions, what the staff are telling us that they require to make sure that they're supported to do their job, and we actually identify appropriately the actions that are meaningful across the HSCP.
I think Lorna's right. Going out and engaging is a much more better. Getting feedback dynamically is a good way of actually taking the temperature. But we just have to get more persuasive. I would have thought, this is a sector which is largely based on people. I would have thought workforce planning should be a lot more of interest to our staff. Do I know? Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Lorna.
Thanks, Sharon. Any other questions or comments? If not, Lorna, can I thank you for the report? And can we agree with the recommendations? Thank you. Number 12, annual review of records management plan. Anne.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So the purpose of this report is to seek the Board's approval of the recommended changes to the records management plan following its annual review, and to ensure the Board that its publication stream has been reviewed and updated. It is recommended that the Board note the records management plan is required to be reviewed annually, and that a review has been carried out, and agree the recommended changes to the plan. Note that a progress update review will be submitted to National Records Scotland on approval of the changes. And lastly, note that the Board's publication stream has been reviewed and updated. So in terms of the legislative context in Section 1, so the IJB produces records through its strategic activities. Effective management of these records ensures compliance with the Public Records Scotland Act 2011, supports public trust and promotes best practice. So under the Act, bodies listed in the schedule must submit a records management plan to the Keeper of Records for approval, demonstrating compliance with statutory obligations. The IJB's RMP was agreed on the 24th of September 2018 and approved on the 21st of May 2019. The plan requires annual review, and any significant changes must be reported to the Keeper. A revised RMP can be submitted at any time. Next, in terms of record management support, the Council supports the IJB through committee services, the Standards Officer and the Project Officer. As a result, most IJB records are stored on council systems and managed according to the council records and information management policies, in line with guidance from the Keeper of Records. On the 26th of September 2017, the IJB formally agreed to adopt West Lothian Council's information management policies. In 2018, the Keeper formed a stakeholder forum to revise the model plan, introducing element 15, which is public records created or held by third parties. This element highlights the importance of managing such records, but does not change existing legal obligations. Authorities must outline in their records management plans how third-party records are identified and managed without needing to impose their own systems on those parties. In terms of review of the record management plan, the IJB project officer, with support from West Lothian Council's information governance officer, has reviewed the RMP, recommending a revised draft with minor changes for submission to the Keeper, as noted in Appendix 1. The IJB submitted its last progress update review on the 2nd of October 2024, a voluntary process that helps demonstrate ongoing compliance with the Public Records Scotland Act and provides feedback from the Keeper's assessment team. A new progress update report outlining notifiable changes has been completed, as seen in Appendix 2, and will be submitted to the Keeper upon approval by the board. Lastly, under the review of the publication scheme, under the Freedom of Information Scotland Act 2002, public authorities must have an ICO-approved publication scheme that makes key information such as policies, minutes and financial reports routinely available without requiring FOI requests. Authorities must keep the scheme up to date and consider the public interest in the information they hold. An updated copy of the board's publication scheme is included as part of Appendix 3 for insurance to the board. Happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any comments? Can we agree to note the recommendations set out in the paper? Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Which brings us to West Lothian Baton of Hope at 2025. Isn't that yourself, Dan?
That is fair. Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to seek the board's approval to support the National Suicide Prevention Initiative, Baton of Hope, by signing up to the Baton of Hope Workforce Pledge. It is recommended that board members note the context of the report, which details the purpose of the Baton of Hope initiative, the associated workforce pledge and actions being undertaken locally to raise awareness of suicide prevention and mental well-being via the West Lothian Baton of Hope Tour. And secondly, raise awareness of the Baton of Hope Tour via their own networks where appropriate. So in terms of the Baton of Hope, this is the UK's largest suicide prevention initiative. It was founded by bereaved families and mental health advocates with the aim to raise awareness, challenge stigma and promote open conversations around suicide and mental health, while driving systematic change in areas like education, healthcare and workplaces. Central to the initiative is the Baton, which tours the UK to unite communities, encourage dialogue and inspire action. Baton bearers, often with personal connections to the cause, such as lived experience, bereavement, advocacy or a professional involvement in mental health, carry it through local areas to highlight the importance of suicide prevention. In 2025, the Baton will visit 20 locations across the UK, with West Lothian selected as the only Scottish stop on the tour. The Baton will arrive on Friday the 5th of September, offering a unique and meaningful opportunity for the local area to represent Scotland in this vital national movement. The Baton will visit 7 areas across West Lothian, concluding with an evening event at West Lothian College for Baton bearers, their families and invited guests. Further information on this is in Appendix 1. The project lead for the West Lothian tour is Donna Patterson-Harvey, who is the CEO of Neil's Hug, a charity to support those affected by suicide in West Lothian, and the event has been planned and organised by Donna and the Neil's Hug team. Local communities, businesses, third sector organisations West Lothian Council and partners have actively supported the Baton of Hope event through awareness-raising efforts, volunteering and resource contributions. West Lothian HSCP has contributed via Suicide Prevention Steering Group and a dedicated subgroup led by the project and project lead and the suicide prevention lead. Key focus of this is encouraging public attendance to support baton bearers during the event. To further support the initiative's mission and aims, we are asking West Lothian organisations to sign the Workforce Pledge. The Workforce Pledge encourages employers to make suicide prevention a core part of their organisational culture, designed to improve knowledge and training in relation to suicide prevention. The requirement of the pledge is detailed within the report. Signing up to the pledge is free, and there are 3 levels of pledge: bronze, silver and gold, with the proposal that the IJB commits West Lothian HSCP to bronze, which would involve being provided a resource pack to support with the requirements of the pledge. Details of each level can be found in Appendix 2. The Baton of Hope represents a significant and timely opportunity for West Lothian as the only Scottish location selected in this 2025 tour. West Lothian has a unique role in representing Scotland in this movement. The collaborative efforts of all involved in the organisation of the event demonstrates a strong commitment to raising awareness, supporting those affected by suicide and promoting meaningful change. By supporting the Baton of Hope tour and committing to the Workforce Pledge, we are taking important steps towards creating a culture of openness, compassion and prevention. Happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you.
Why us? Why have we been selected over the rest of Scotland? I'm hoping the answer is because we are absolutely the best by a mile. But why West Lothian?
Okay, come in, Chair.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So I don't know the details of the specific application that Donna at Neil Huggs submitted, but in terms of the work that Donna does with Neil Huggs and what goes on in West Lothian in general, specifically within our third sector, is they offer a vast amount of support to people bereaved or by suicide or with lived experience themselves. So I know that there's a wealth of knowledge, experience and passion there from people in West Lothian. So as much as I don't know the details around the requirements of the application, I'm sure that played a big part in it.
That's great. Do we have IJB representation at the event, either through the day or at the West Lothian College?
Not that I'm aware of at the moment, John. So I guess that was part of the ask today. So, you know, if anybody is free to go along to their local area, on the appendix of the tour, you can see there's different locations there. So we would welcome anyone to come along. It's also starting off in Linlithgow in the morning and finishing at the centre within Livingston. But if you would be interested in coming along or any other members are, then please just let me know and I can let Donna know and arrange that.
I'll have to check my diary, but yeah, we should be supporting this. Thanks, Diane.
Thanks.
Alan.
Thanks, Tom. And I suppose really my comment is really to thank Dan for bringing this report forward. I think the work that Donna in particular has done is probably, if it helps answer your question, John, I think it's been a pioneer in terms of suicide prevention and taken a huge amount of opportunity to promote the Baton of Hope. So it's great to see, I suppose, some recognition that the Baton of Hope is coming to West Lothian, and we're promoting it widely within community groups and third sector to make sure that the public are aware of taking part in this opportunity. And probably worth acknowledging that we've also got an event which is taking place within the Gateway in a couple of weeks' time, which Diane herself is involved in, which is around taking forward the suicide prevention strategy. So that's for third sector organisations as well to get involved in. So again, that's a similar opportunity to promote this much needed campaign. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Alan. I'm Jad.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Diane. I fully support this. I think we know that mental illness is on the increase, and anything that reduces the stigma of mental illness through education and gives people some tools to cope with can only be commended. So I think it's an excellent piece of work, and hope we can all support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony?
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I've got it in my diary to go along to the one at Broxton Albion Sports Club at 9:30 to 10:30 on the 5th of September. So I'll be there. If you want, I can be there representing the IJB, or as just as a local councillor.
IJB.
Or both. IJB. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Or what did you say about given this is an IJB paper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other questions or comments? No. I certainly would agree that it should be supported. Unfortunately, I have an international engagement on that period of time. Otherwise, I would be down at Linlithgow Palace, which just looks as bad as I look at the moment, a ruin. But on a serious note, yes, I think members who can make it, please do so. And it's a very worthwhile organisation. So thank you for that. And can we agree to note the recommendation in the paper? And as members are volunteering to attend to raise awareness of the Baton folk who are within West Lothian. Thank you. Paper 14, Coming Home Dynamic Support Register. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide members of the IJB with an updated position of the locally held Dynamic Support Register. Section 1 of the accompanying report provides details of the background to the establishment of the register, with Section 3 providing details with the number and classification of the individuals held on the register. Currently, there are 40 individuals held in the register, 6 of whom have been assessed as requiring urgent and intensive care planning, and this is a reduction of 3 individuals from the previous quarter. For those that continue to require urgent and intensive care planning, this work has been progressed by the multidisciplinary group that looks at the onward destinations achieved for individuals, with Section 3.3 providing details of the multi-agency review group. Here, in conclusion, I ask that members note the content of the reports and the ongoing monitoring of the locally held register, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Karen. Any questions, colleagues? Tony, your hand, is it still up or is it up for this paper? Was that you waiting for the baton to come? No. That's it. That's fine, thanks. Any questions? Any comments? We note the paper, no recommendations. Thanks, Karen. 15 long-term conditions framework consultation. Neil?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this paper is to advise the board that the Scottish Government has undertaken a consultation on a new long-term conditions framework. The report, as mentioned, outlines the Scottish Government's call for views on a new integrated framework to address long-term conditions. The consultation paper is included as an appendix in today's papers. The consultation went live in April 2025, composing of 19 questions via online survey, which is also found as an appendix in today's pack. To support the development of a submission, feedback was sought from key stakeholders across our extended management team, our IJB strategic planning group representatives, our staff, and our GP practice colleagues. A proposed submission was taken to the extended senior management team meeting in July of 2025, with the final version being approved and submitted on July the 25th, 2025. The actual response is also included as an appendix in today's pack. The board are asked to note the content of the report today, note that a proposed submission was approved by West Lothian HSCP's extended management team in July 25, and that an approved version was submitted to the Scottish Government via the online survey on the 25th of July 2025. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? John?
Neil, what are your expectations coming out off the back of the consultation? Or is this just one of a raft of Scottish Government consultations?
I'm interested to see how it turns out. To be honest, we were assured that our primary care strategy, which we discussed earlier, had obvious links to making sure that our intentions for managing long-term conditions kind of align with the government's. So in terms of the cross-cutting themes, we picked up definitely that early anticipation, prevention, anticipatory care planning was all involved. Integration, particularly, which we've spoken a lot about, and in particular, engagement and empowerment and education for people within that. Of course, this paper is just about long-term conditions, but I think those messages filter through our primary care strategy as we've discussed earlier.
Well, that's really why I raised it, because it has a lot of synergy, but I'm not seeing any, I mean, apart from consultations, I'm not seeing any ideas yet from government that seem to move along the lines we've been discussing through this meeting. So I just wondered if you'd had any feedback from government, or if they'd given you any idea of what the direction of travel was.
No, sorry, nothing more specific than that.
Thanks, Neil.
Any further questions? Any comments? Can we agree the recommendations noted in the paper? Thank you. Takes us to the work plan. Can we note the work plan? Are there any other suggestions for the work plan? No, we just agree with what's presented today. And the note, the date of the next meeting is the 24th of September at 2 o'clock in West Lothian Council Chambers, where we'll have a new chair. On that basis, colleagues, that concludes today's business. And thank you for your attendance, your contributions, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.